And good evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
And I'm Rich Carlson.
And I'm Marshall Sherard, KE4ZNR.
And we are the Scanner Guys live tonight. So good evening, everybody. We have an exciting show for you. We're actually going to be talking about the history of radio monitoring in North Carolina. Marshall is joining us. He's an expert in this field in scanners and two-way radio communications. So we're going to be able to talk about a wide range of things. He's also going to dive into the history of North Carolina. First of all, Marshall, tell us how you got into this hobby. I mean, everybody's got a unique and interesting story of how they've got into this.
Most definitely. And thank y'all for having me here this evening, first off. But I tell you what, you can blame my parents, first off, for getting me involved in this hobby so many years ago. It all started, I was a youngster. My parents had upgraded their stereo system in their den, so they handed me down their old stereo system, which, of course, had the fancy 8-track player, as most of them did in the late 70s, early 80s. And, of course, there's only so many songs you can listen to on 8-track tapes. You know, Conway Twitty, you can only play that so many times. So I quickly realized there was a little AM, FM tuner that was on this stereo system. I didn't know how to use it. And but I noticed that there was this wire that was coming out the back of this thing. You know, my parents didn't care about it at all. But I decided to mess around with it a little bit, tuned across the AM band one night, was surprised that I could hear some stations from a little bit distance away. So then that started me a little bit into the radio hobby. I pestered my parents until they got me the always famous Radio Shack flavor radio that everybody used to love, that had the AM FM little transmitter radio, you know, transceiver radio. So that was fun to just be able to listen late at night and tune across the AM and FM bands there. I fell out of it for a little while, but then in my high school years, I ran into a buddy of mine that was a volunteer with a local EMS agency. He gave me a ride home from school one day, and I saw the scanner that he had in his car. And I was like, dude, you can listen to Fire EMS dispatch? That's possible? And he said, oh, yeah. He said, you know, this is how you do it. And so that got me looking around again. And again, this is in the 90s, in the early days of the internet. And, you know, at the point when I first got started in the hobby, we were still dealing with the dial-up bulletin board systems of the late 80s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. We had one locally here in North Carolina that was called Frequencies R Us, that was managed or run by a guy that was a TV engineer for one of the local TV stations here in Central North Carolina. And, you know, he knew that there was a bunch of radio geeks like himself that wanted info, and so there was an Excel file that was stored there on Frequencies R Us, or Freaks R Us as it got to be known. And this Excel file was the triangle frequency list, and it was the holy grail for the folks that wanted to know what and where to listen here in Central North Carolina. But because it was a dial-up bulletin board system, and because it was about a little bit under a 1 meg file, you had to set your phone up overnight to download that Excel file and pray that it did not get disconnected sometime during the middle of the night, because then you just have to start over from the very beginning. So, you know, that got me started. And then I got interested in the ham radio side of it, got my ham ticket. There's a local group of guys that I really got to give a whole lot of respect to, and that is the Tar Heel Scanner Shortwave Listeners Group. This group has been around for probably 30, 40 years now. And these guys, wonderful group of guys, they took me in when I was a youngster. One of the guys that went to the Tar Heel Scanner Shortwave group meetings that we would have every month was a guy by the name of Rich Wells. N2MCA was his hand call sign. And he, of course, was known for having the website when you know, the web came around. In the olden days of the internet, he came up with strongsignals.net, which was the predecessor or the radio site before you had Radio Reference around. So strongsignals.net was where everybody went to you know, of course, Rich always dazzled everybody because he always managed to get the full coverage receivers that Upateros, the AORs, the all the hard to find radios from across seas, and that's when you wanted to have the full 800 megahertz coverage, because that was the place to listen to. But those guys took me in. They guided me in the hobby. They introduced me to monitoring times. And that was a big learning experience for me, and that got me started in the hobby. And from there, I actually a few years later, I ended up working for Radio Shack, ironically, here in the Triangle area.
Cool.
I was there in 1997 when Rich and I were one of the first ones here in this area to get the Bearcat 235 XLT, which for those long-time hobbyists will know that's the first trunk tracking scanner that was ever put on the market. And let me tell you, that was like night and day in terms of being able to listen to stuff. I mean, we only had really one trunk system in the area at that time, but still listening to that system was a pain until the 235 came out. So here I am working at Radio Shack. Radio Shack had not released their version of the 235 yet, but I had my version. Of course, I had the Uniden version, and I dared to wear it into work one day to the Radio Shack store, and my manager said, "You got to put that away. We don't have one of those yet. You can't be showing folks something that we don't have in our stores yet." So, even back then there was the we can't be showing folks what they can actually have instead of what's actually carried in the store. So,
wow.
Of course, the other memory I have burned in my mind from Radio Shack days was the time that I lost out when Radio Shack was doing their final sell-off of the Pro 2006s, and we had about 10 of them sitting in the storeroom, and I wish to God I bought every one of them to this day. Because I mean, they were on a discounted price, but obviously as a youngster, I could not afford all of them. But I look back at it now, and it's kind of like the Corvette that you passed up as a youngster or something like that.
We had the same thing with the Radio Shack by us. They had 4 or 5 2004s that had been returned, and they offered them to me for half price. If I would add the money, I would have bought them.
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, that's one of those. I mean, there's the few iconic models that have stayed around throughout the years that no matter what else has changed, you're always going to be able to listen to, in theory, you're going to be able to listen to aviation, you're going to be able to listen to railroads, you're going to be able to listen to military, some of the military stuff. And the 2006, you just can't beat it. I mean, even after all these years, it's still considered to be the king VHF, UHF non-trunking. So, that for me, that was it was a hard thing to pass that up. But I worked for Radio Shack for a little while, and then about 1999, I had a guy that saw what my input there at strongsignals.net, and he emailed me. He said, I got this job here that just opened up as a producer for traffic patrol here in the Triangle area. Do you want to come, work for us, because you know more about scanners than anybody else in the area? And it was one of the bureau chief for what was then called Traffic Patrol Broadcasting, later bought by Westwood One Metro Networks here. Mm-hmm. And I did that. I was the producer for the traffic reporters here in the Triangle area. Did that for about 4 years until the end of about 2004, when I can see where the industry was headed, and I could see there was not much of a future in terms of staying there. So, I've kind of done several other spots, IT work and stuff like that. But for the last 9 years, I've been working in public safety as a radio system engineer. I love the job. It gets it is fun to see how what I work on interacts with the other public safety systems here in North Carolina, and helping shape and hopefully making our first responders and our public safety folks safe. At the end of the day, that's our end goal. We always like to say that if they're doing their jobs properly, they're going to use their radio 100 times more than they use their gun. So that's our end goal, is to make their radios work every time they try to key up on the, using their radios. So
every day they don't have to talk to you is a good day, right?
Well, yes,
that means the system's working.
Yeah, so the radio is an imperfect science, but you do the best you can with what the laws give you, and you go with what what the what you can do with the radios that you're provided with. So it's been a lot of fun, and staying with the hobby as well. I step back in my free time a little bit in terms of the hobby, just because when I work on radios 8+ hours a day, I like to come home and have some time to do something a little bit different, because going home, and folks seem to have gotten the misconception that I just turn my back on all hobby radio stuff, and that's not the case. I still help program radios for public safety personnel, in terms of like scanners and stuff like that for public safety personnel around here. I still stay in touch with the hobby, but I had to have some. You have to have some dividing time. As much as I love radios and everything else, it's not healthy to be around something 24 hours a day. So you have some time to do other stuff as well. But volunteering at my church, stuff like that has been a lot of fun. But radio has been with me the majority of my life, and it will always be. I think I don't see it going anywhere. And although we've had some major changes here in the hobby in the last year and a half, we lost someone that was influential to our hobby and to everything that we kind of hold dear in terms of the hobby. We lost Paul, but obviously he would want us to carry on and do amazing stuff with the stuff that we have, try to make the products better. So, just being a participant and being able to watch it on the sidelines as well has been a blast.
Yeah, it certainly has. The funny thing, we were co-workers at one point. I worked in Boston as a traffic reporter, and I remember that merger with Westwood One. So we were working for the same company at the same time.
That's
although
right.
Different markets. But,
yep. Well, then you must know the word ETAC then, ETAK, which was their kind of online early traffic reporting system. What it was is they would have me type stuff into a database program, and then it would spit out a text version of all the accidents and everything else. And I could see even at that point, kind of they were moving slightly towards, because when I first started, we would have a reporter in an airplane over Raleigh and one over Durham. And by the time I left there, we did not have anybody on the road as far as traffic reporters anymore, because everything was being done via cameras, just to have someone look at cameras. I'm old school. I still maintained, and I still loved having that, being able to talk to my coworkers on the UHF frequency that we use, two-way radio frequency. And, we would, can I get an update, Brian? Can I get an update, Vanna? You would call out to them. They would be up in the plane. They'd give you their feedback, or else you could hear them on a separate UHF frequency doing a report live on air to WPTF or one of the other stations around here in the Triangle. So, most definitely. I do have to say, when you get bought up by a behemoth such as Westwood One, it kind of cramps your style a little bit, because I have been so used to, don't hold this against me, guys. I'm a Central North Carolina guy. I'm a Hurricanes fan. I'm a Carolina Hurricanes fan. Always will be, because, that's my hockey team right there. But we used to have, because we would they were one of the sponsors of our reports, they would let us have tickets to their games. Yeah. And so and our studios were located just a block up from what was then at the ESA or the RBC Center, but now it's the PNC Arena here in Raleigh. But I would go to see almost every Hurricanes game without fail, or a good number of them. And by the time Westwood One bought us, they said, no, we can't have any quid pro quos. That doesn't look good. And so that kind of took that part of the fun away from it for me. But I still, to this day, it's painful sometimes, but I'm a Hurricanes fan, and hopefully we can get back to the one-time glory days. That one year that we won the Stanley Cup. So,
we have a watcher, listener asking. We're supposed to ask you about Nicolas Cage.
Oh yes! Oh my gosh! That's a funny little joke. Okay, that has really nothing to do with radio, but I guess I have to tell the story. Is that my parents live a couple of blocks away. As they gotten older, I bought a house kind of in their neighborhood so I could help them as they got older. But they have a staircase. They have a 2-story house and a staircase, and along that, going up to the second floor, they have a wall, which is my mom is decorated with like hundreds of pictures of family members. And of course, they went out of town one time, and they asked me to take care of the house. And I just had this, I guess I saw it on Reddit or somewhere else where somebody did something similar. But I printed out one of the craziest pictures of Nick Cage that I could find and put it in one of the picture frames. And I just said, let me just sit back and see how long it takes them before they recognize it. I changed the picture. Went up to the second floor standing, and so it took maybe about 4 or 5 months actually before they actually realized, because they would go up and down it. They would go past it every day. I'm talking about several times a day. And because you just get so used to doing that, blind spot. And so, several months later, it was figured out, and to her credit, Mom was a good sport. She allowed me to take a picture of her standing right beside the picture of Nick Cage in the picture frame. So, needless to say, my sister didn't like it as much though, because I covered up one of her pictures with that picture of Nick Cage. And so, of course, the joke is that Nick Cage is now cousin Nick, because he's not a permanent part of the family. So every time an article comes out about something crazy that he's done, now it's cousin Nick. So that's where that comes from, is that cousin Nick will forever be a part of our family, no matter what embarrassing stunt he's pulled.
So the gears are turning in my head.
Oh, yes.
We got some pictures on the wall that my wife is I'm gonna see how long it takes for her to know.
I don't want to be held responsible for this though. This
sounds like fun. It certainly sounds like fun, yeah.
Well, I certainly thought that after 1 week it would have been spotted. I would have, because I printed up the picture where he's like, eyes are bulging and everything else. I said, surely they got to notice it. But no, they just walked right past it for about 4 or 5 months. And and this is before my mom was on Facebook, so I just kept posting updates to my friends going, hey, cousin Nick's still showing up there on the wall. And nobody said anything to them, thank goodness. But, that's when I get extremely bored, my attention deficit disorder takes over, and that's what happens. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going back to the strong signals.
Yes,
that, and like Carmen, right? That was really the bomb of websites back in the day before Radio Reference. I mean, that's where it was. That's
most
where you
definitely.
went for information. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that Rich had not considered was the database side of it. But at that time, that was too early for database to be a part of it, because I mean, really, you consider the Bearcat 245 was the first scanner that even had any type of database, real data. I mean, you could really go with if you really wanted to go the OptoScan with the 2006, but that was clunky. I mean, if you're really talking about database, then the 245 with the dial-in aspect back then was the first one, the first real consumer one.
Well, they had that. It was kind of like an OptoScan program that would work with some of it. Wasn't OptoScan though. It was right. And I'm trying to remember the name of the program, but it actually worked with the 245. And they had an EDAX version and a Motorola version, and I played with those forever.
It was painful. It was painful in the early days. But kudos again to the folks that were trying new stuff. I mean, sometimes the stuff works, sometimes it doesn't.
But back then that's all you had.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. And again, I do think, and I'm not trying to put him in a higher place than anything else, but Paul was a lot of the brains behind a lot of these. I mean, I know it's kind of cliche and everything, or kind of, it's not really fair, but I kind of put him on the same pedestal in our industry as Steve Jobs was to Apple. And again, you're talking about two different market sizes. Number one, computers versus radio. But Paul was always trying to think outside the box, to think what else could be done, or what could be done that had not been done yet. And he started.
Thankfully, he was in a position to make that stuff work, though, too.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And kudos to him for a lot of times. I heard he would, when we were exchanging emails, there would be ideas thrown out by the community that he would take back to folks, and unfortunately, because of one reason or another, they would just, I'm sorry, we can't do that at this time. Yeah. So he got, and of course, when he couldn't, a lot of times he couldn't respond back and say, hey, no, the upper guys have said no at this time. So, a lot of times when it came down. Folks thought he was not caring of ideas. He actually did care about a lot of the ideas that were being tossed out. He just was not able to always implement them because of certain reasons, one way or another. And so, yeah, I mean, it's frustrating in some regards, but that's business, you know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we all have our ideas behind that perfect scanner or that perfect computer or that perfect phone that, you know, and then just to have somebody that you can actually contact with such an idea. And yeah, it might not be practical, but at least it's going to be considered.
I mean, the other thing that kind of set him apart as well is his presence on Radio Reference as well. He was reachable, and then he would answer questions. If he was able to answer it or be able to give you a yes or no on something, he was able to. Like there were some things he just ignored for whatever reason. It could have been something that was coming out in the pipeline, and he didn't want to give too many breadcrumbs out there because you know they're in competition with everybody else in the field. You know. I mean, competition's kind of died out somewhat in the scanner industry. We had Radio Shack, we had GRE, and then we had Unit, and we had the three kind of going head to head, although a lot of the Radio Shack scanners were made by GRE, but they kind of look like they were a separate competitor. And then, you know, now it's just Whistler and Unit, and everything's been very quiet on the Whistler camp as of right now. I'm hoping that things start to heat up a bit because, you know, that healthy competition is really good for the companies and one for the consumer as well.
Yeah. It really.
Yeah. Competition really drives innovation, and with just the two companies, that stifles it somewhat, but at least there's still some competition. And even if you're a Whistler fan, you want Uniden to succeed. And if you're a Uniden fan, you want Whistler to succeed, because if they do something good, Uniden's going to want to try and do something better. So,
yeah.
Well, and it's just.
Yeah. I never quite understood that about folks you kind of have it's Coke versus Pepsi. You know, you kind of have folks that prefer one over the other. And, you know, I've always kind of gone, why do you want, if you're a Whistler fan, why do you want Uniden to fail, or vice versa? If you're a Uniden, why would you want your competitor to fail? Because then that you have nothing to kind of compete against. And
I mean, where would Airbus be without Boeing? You know.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And so. It always, and of course, Paul had to tell me at times, shut up, you know, don't post, you know, don't be inflammatory, you know, because I would post responses that sometimes Paul couldn't, and I would say that would be, sometimes folks would call it antagonistic, but at the same time, I was well-meaning at all times.
It's not a bad deal to say, hey, I don't like the way Uniden does this, or I think Whistler's on the wrong track. But, you know, it's fine to put a criticism, but, you know, be polite about it.
Oh, yeah. That's all this folks are saying. I mean, you know, we are extremely lucky to still have a hobby that is kind of propped up in a lot of ways by the users of the radio systems that we listen to. You know, every time I go out and I look into a local law enforcement vehicle, usually there's normally it'll be like a Uniden 536 these days, or a not too many rank and file folks can afford a SDS 200 in their vehicles. The chiefs maybe, but the rank and file used to have the 536 or something a little bit earlier. I've even with some 796s from the past and stuff like that. So
we get that now. We get we'll get a fire department that calls up. I need 536s, plus I need a SDS 200 for the chief. You know, it's
Oh yeah,
that's the way it works.
I mean, and so we thankfully have that lifeblood still in our hobby as well. That folks, the public safety agencies themselves are still buying them as well. So that's a crucial part of it as well. We've also been very blessed here in Central North Carolina, at least in my area, that a lot of the communications have not been encrypted yet. There's been some smaller areas that have decided to do that full time, but the rank and file have believed that dispatch should be in the clear, and operations certain operational channels should be encrypted, and I fully support that. And so the mantra that kind of Florida has with hiding behind encryption to a point. Officer safety is always paramount in my mind, and so that's always what I take first and foremost in my daily work. But I also want interoperability to be very easy in terms of if we have a trooper that's chasing somebody, I want the county agencies around him to be able to listen to his radio traffic and know where he's at to assist him when it comes to it. So we've been very lucky and very blessed. We've also been, it's kind of weird here in Central North Carolina that we are and not to put one type of radio system over another, but we're a Motorola heavy radio system here, our Motorola system core for radio systems here in Central North Carolina. We have a few exceptions. There's a county southeast of me here that has a Harris system, and there's a couple more to the west. But for the most part, and the statewide radio system that is in use here in North Carolina, the Viper system is a Motorola system. And so being able to have one size fits all, it helps out as well in terms of not having a lot of disparate type of radio systems, not having DMR scattered around public safety as well. So,
yeah, we got kind of the same thing here, except that when I moved here 5 years ago, the town that I live in was open, and that's one of the things I looked at when I bought my house is, hey, are the police encrypted? And then the week I moved in here, they went encrypted.
Oh yeah. Well, they knew you were coming, Rich. They knew you were coming.
They must have. Hey, we got a great question. Are you getting many other brands of radios to work on Viper, or is it all Motorola, only Motorola?
No, it's actually, and again, I don't. Motorola, the Viper system itself is what we call a secondary. We are a secondary user of Viper, which means we have a different radio system that we use primarily where I work at. And we use Viper as an interoperability or a second option, meaning that it's kind of a backup or a second option if it's there. Right. So I'm not speaking for Viper. I won't speak for the state of North Carolina. They have their own folks, but you can go on and look in their website for the state of North Carolina Highway Patrol or the state of North Carolina Department of Public Safety, and they have a Viper section there. If you just do a search for NC Viper, you'll see the documents where they said they support a wide range of radios. Now, they're also being forward thinking in that they've started putting out some mandates for including TDMA down the road. They're using a combination of 800 and 700 megahertz in the statewide Viper system now, and it's only FDMA. This type what they call phase one system, as those in the hobby know it. Down the road, though, as as their users expand on the system and frequency resources become even more precious, they're going to go. There's a look towards possibly moving to TDMA down the road, phase 2 TDMA. They have not done that. They're still trying to get all their systems to be all the Quantars switched out for what they call GTRs in the Viper system. There's a lot of stuff that they're going through as far as it's still a long way down the road, but they're telling the users, whether or not you're a primary user of Viper or secondary, that you need to consider having TDMA in the flash code of your radio. Doesn't matter if it's Harris or if it's Motorola, whatever. You got to have that as an option going forward. So that's something that a lot of folks are looking toward the road. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
So how much penetration is there with the Viper and like systems in the state? Is it 50%, 80%, 90%?
It's amazing. Viper first came about, just to kind of give a little bit of history. It goes all the way back to 99. We had the Worldwide Special Olympics come for the Summer Games to here in Central North Carolina that year in 1999. And at that time, we had a little itty bitty TRS 6809 system here in the Triangle area that was nothing at that point. But Motorola came in. They realized that because these Special Olympic Games were going to be held in all these different cities here in central North Carolina that were going to be separated by 20, 30, 40 geographic miles apart, then they needed to start building out at that time was just a smart net system, or starting to be a smart zone system.
Right.
And they built it out for the Worldwide Special Olympics. But then there's this other pesky thing that kept popping up here in North Carolina, and I'm sure that Jonathan knows about this now that he's annoyed, although he hasn't had to deal with it as much as I have here, is hurricanes. That we in North Carolina have our hurricanes. And so the state said, well, we need some type of interoperability solution so that when those troopers have to direct folks from the coast to the central North Carolina area or beyond, we need them to be able to talk from the coast to the central part of the state or talk, wherever they need to geographically in the state. So the system was first built out as a kind of a communication solution for the Highway Patrol. The Highway Patrol was dealing with the system, 30, 40 plus year old system. That system that we were talking about earlier, Rich, that with the low band VHF, where people in California would post up in the 80s, 90s, or, I heard 42.600 with the 173.8 field tone back in the day. They were still dealing with that antiquated low band VHF technology at the time. Yeah. And they realized they could see on the horizon they needed to make a big change. And so that's when they started making an agreement with Motorola. I started building out the systems, the sites, and, in the interleaving time in the last, 20 years or so, it's really come out and it's a great resource to have. Let me tell you, and every day it just keeps getting better and better. But it's a blast to know that with the turn of a dial, and I can take my Motorola radio sitting here, I can turn a dial and I can listen to someone halfway across the state. And now, granted, that's not something that you really want to do in tie-up tower resources, so that's frowned upon. But should you need to have that capability, or any of our firefighters can go from anywhere here in central North Carolina, can go to the mountains or go to the coast and be able to talk to the local first responders by just taking their own radio with them.
Yeah, we had the same thing with Starcom in Illinois. The ability to go anywhere in the state. We had a tornado 150, 200 miles away from Chicago, and some of our resources went out there for that, and they were able to use the same radios. So, so what were they using before Viper came along?
It was basically that low band VHF system. They had some high band VHF frequencies interspersed in there that they could use for special events, say like the state fair each year. So they would rely on the low band VHF system, which had high band VHF kind of backhaul repeater connections. Nowadays we use microwave, of course, for that. No, but back then they had a kind of an antiquated system, as it were. But that's what they would use. They would use the low band VHF, and should anything happen, you couldn't, if you were monitoring it, unless you had a trooper near you, you couldn't hear a lot of times their side of the communication. You'd only hear the dispatch side of it. Right. It's that one-sided, So it was very much a wonderful change when they went to 800, and now you can hear, both the dispatcher and the trooper, and hear both sides of what's going on. So
yeah, that was the same thing with me in Massachusetts. When I first got into the hobby, the state police were on the low band, so you could only hear the dispatcher or the vehicle if it was relatively close to you. You knew that there was a state trooper near you if you could hear the radio transmissions. So it was kind of
chances are he was right behind you with the red lights going.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, so it was really a blessing when they converted as well. Mass State Police converted from a low band system to a trunk system, and you're like, wow, all this communication that we're now finally hearing, and it brought in up even more channels, and which became talk groups at this point, because it was a trunk system. But yeah, I mean, it's so amazing, the distance on low band was great.
Oh yeah. Well, the joke, of course, is that a few years ago, well, many years ago now, because I was still at Traffic Patrol Broadcasting when I did this, but one year April Fools came around, and so at the time, I think it was Radio Reference. I'm pretty sure it was. I posted up in the North Carolina forum. I posted up a thread, a sticky thread, because I'd just been made moderator at the time. I posted up a sticky thread saying that the state of North Carolina Viper system was converting to GE Ericsson, because at the time it was still GE Ericsson. And I said, see the attached press release. And I didn't realize that how much of a reach the forums had, because the guy who heads up the North Carolina Viper system actually was surfing by the forums that day, as he normally did. He clicked on that thread and goes, "Wait a minute, was something I was not told about this?" What he thought he had it. But what it was the Word document that when you clicked on it, it would open up and say, "April Fools, this is a joke. The Viper's not changing; it's still Motorola." Blah blah blah. But it was, Mike had he had a little bit of heart attack deal for a second when he thought, the state didn't tell me, and I'm the guy who heading this up. So, I had to quickly realize that, posts have meanings in at that point, because
yes,
yeah,
where he about had a heart attack there for a few seconds instead of.
I'm sure he did.
So,
I'm sure he did. I mean, that's the thing I've noticed with a lot of people. Like I've sat down with several different people that were up in ranks for communications, and they're fully aware of Radio Reference, and they periodically check that, and it's amazing, that there is just like certain people are in certain positions because they're a radio geek or a scanner geek, and they got there because of that.
Oh yeah. So
that's exactly. We had the same problem when I was working. I had to be very careful about what I posted, because I didn't want to, betray my work. And now, even with my work from home job, my part-time job, I got to be careful what I posted there, because it might reflect on the company. So, now with we know the state police was mostly on VHF low band. What about the local counties? Was there like a low band statewide channel or anything like that? Like some states?
We had a high band VHF frequency that was kind of used statewide as a law enforcement learn, I believe is what it was called. It stood for some acronym that somebody got paid a large amount of money to come up with. Don't ask me what it means. It's kind of like how Viper stands for. It actually stands for something, right? I promise you that. It stands for Voice Interoperability Plan for Emergency Responders. And let me tell you, I want to be the person that just has to sit in their office all day and come up with these little acronyms, because somebody gets, But anyway, up until
they probably came up with the acronym and tried to find the words to make it fit.
Yeah. You have to make it sound cool. You can't have it, it's got to be Viper or something. It's got to be something cool. But no, we had a mismatch. I mean, it was like everywhere else. It was a UHF, in a lot of places VHF. You had a lot of counties are still dealing with technology that they hadn't had for probably close to 30, 40 years. I mean, they just got complacent, and the industry kept on. And finally, here in Central North Carolina, they said, "Hey, we got to do something to help make communications easier, because we can't talk from two towns right beside each other."
Right.
And so that's when they started moving up to 800, and it's made life so much easier. But like I always say, the technology can do anything you want it to do. It's always the people that get in the way sometimes. So the radio systems themselves are very flexible. It's sometimes difficult to get everybody to agree on everything. But that's just part of the job. So, I mean, trunking really, and I think it did for a lot of areas. It's not a perfect scenario, but it definitely helped save a lot of interoperability issues. For at least here in North Carolina, it has.
So it sounds like that it was really like everything under the kitchen sink before Viper came in.
Oh yeah,
you had some VHF, UHF, and low band. For the most part, comparison with Massachusetts, it was entirely UHF for all the local, and then you had low band for the state police, and then there was one frequency 482.3875, which was the car-to-car channel, which every city in town pretty much shared. So they were, they saw one of the police officers in the neighboring town, they knew to go to that channel. They could communicate with one another right off of there, and they wouldn't be on the main channel. But it's that alone, with everything under the kitchen sink being tossed out there, like you said, interoperability was extremely difficult, because that means you would have to have a multi-band radio, or you would have to have multiple radios.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, we in Illinois, we had 39.5 was the everywhere outside of Chicago channel for most parts, and of course, out of the 100 so counties in Illinois, more than half of them probably had a sheriff and his cousin was his deputy, and that was pretty much it for law enforcement in the county. So one channel would be fine, but that's pretty much it now. But now almost everybody's on Starcom in Illinois, and say the Viper's almost everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes you're, like I said, you're either a primary or secondary user of Viper. Either way, it's going to be a part of your communications plan. And this comes from somebody, I know y'all did this too, is that once a year, every year, you'd wait for the new police call to come out, and you would do frequency listings to figure out what UHF and what VHF new assignments had been either assigned or new hidden channels that had come out, and since the last time it had been printed, and so that was the gold mine back then. Trying to decipher all the VHF UHF stuff was just learning who was where. And so that was the
and we had the phone tree when we found out which Radio Shacks got the police calls first, so we get them a week before everybody else. We'd call all your buddies after you went to the store to get it, to make sure you got yours before the other guy got it.
That's right.
Yeah, I literally waited on those police call books. I was able to participate in towards the tail end of the Scanner Master books from Massachusetts. Being a contributor in there, I actually got the last publication. My name is actually in it, and it's crazy, to to be purchasing this book, and then little did I know I was going to be working for Scanner Master later on. I mean, I remember.
I still got all my old police call pluses somewhere in my office, but I know exactly where my Monitor Americas are. I mean, they're just, it's so fun to just go back and look at how simple it once was. But still, it was a learning curve at the time, but there was so much good information within those volumes.
Well, we did the Scanner Master book for Illinois. They had the state police had their EDAC system, had only been in place for about a year, and it was only being used for special occasions. They had a big governor's conference. And so it would just listed 10 frequencies. Oh, and these are a trunking system that the state police uses from time to time. And that was pretty much it. Everything else was some sort of conventional repeaters. And the high-tech thing were DPL codes.
You'd have simplex on a repeater output channel, and they thought that was nobody could hear them because it was simplex and secret squirrel. So,
Oh, and we had people that believed that private line meant that nobody could hear
it. Please, let me tell you, the area which I helped, we actually had, before we went P25, we actually had private call on our radio system. And let me tell you, no matter how many times you tell folks that private call is not private, they still don't listen. And we were glad to actually get rid of it, because it just created so many nightmare scenarios where folks would be calling up their girlfriends instead of their, it was scenarios that would kind of make you blush so we were just like, okay, we just got that and the phone patches we got to get away with, because they're just not helpful at this point. Everybody has a phone. That was good back in the 90s, but no, it's dangerous now. So there's a lot of issues there. So
well, the same thing. We had to start keeping an eye on the text messages that they were sending through the MDTs, and trying to tell the guys that that's all discoverable, guys.
Everything is logged. You just so that's what we tell them now in our academies, is that we say, hey, anything when you key up on that radio, no matter if you think it's encrypted or not, whether or not you got a little Motorola encrypted symbol on your screen, just treat it. Think about like your priest is going to hear you say that. So whatever you say, go into it like he's going to be able to hear every word you're saying. So please keep that in mind, because I don't want to hear your name. I don't want to see your name on the paper or see you on the evening news because you embarrassed yourself.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, it's kind of like the same thing you learned in the radio industry. The microphone is always hot. No matter what, it's always hot. So make sure you're not saying anything that's inappropriate.
That's right. Yeah.
So where do you see the communications in your areas, say 10 years from now?
I do see TDMA, obviously with Viper considering it. I do see that somewhat becoming of an issue, but not so much, not as much as people think right off the bat, just because of the fact that right now, the way how systems work in this area, and I can only speak for Central North Carolina, the Piedmont area, is that capacity is well outstepping demand, meaning that thankfully these systems have been built out so far, knock on wood, these systems have been built out to have enough capacity to plan for future use. And that rarely happens in the industry, but we lucked out here that so many of the systems have so much capacity that even if everybody keyed up the exact same millisecond, it would be hard to busy out the system. It's just, thankfully, we've had some folks that have thought about that and kind of gone in the right direction as that. I do see encryption taking more, I hate to say it with recent events, and I don't want to go too much into it, but encryption is becoming more and more prevalent, especially with it becoming easier to add to radios, it being a software solution instead of a hardware board-based solution in the radios. It's even easier to do encryption these days, and it takes less time. So that, unfortunately, like it or not, is still going to be a part of, the way how things go. I still think that we have, there's still a lot of learning curve for the end users. We do training. We do training with our academies. We do a training with our chiefs. We try to, we train the dispatchers. We try to go all around and do training for everybody, but you're only going to get as far as someone's willing to learn. And unfortunately, unless you're a radio geek like us, a lot of this stuff is going to be boring to you. And so it's difficult at times to make it entertaining. When I go and do training courses at the academies, I bring up Die Hard as one of the topics, and they go, "Why you talk about Die Hard?" Well, in that movie, which I admit, hey, it's the best Christmas movie. Okay, fight me. I'm just saying it's the best Christmas movie out there. But think about it. You have one radio where the bad guys are able to talk to each other. On that same radio, they could talk to the 911 center. They could talk to Argyle in the limo. I mean, it's one of those things.
Magic radios, yeah.
They can do anything. And so that's I try to tell our folks in the academies, that's not reality. You can't have one radio to talk to everybody. We have done a lot to make interoperability better, but you're still not going to be able to talk to Hans Gruber. You're still not going to be able to talk to, the bad guys or the non. You have to know how to navigate your radio. This is where we try to train them, and we try to make it entertaining too. So training is going to also be a big part of it, as well as the radios are still. I mean, let's face it, guys. The radios are not getting any more simple. We went from a time where you only had 16 channels in the radio.
Yeah.
Now you can have hundreds. And you can have multiple systems. So when I try to tell someone, okay, you're not on our system anymore, you're on the Viper system, then their eyes kind of glaze over. Well, what do you mean by that? It's going to have different coverage? What, am I not? So it's, it's kind of like trying to tell a Verizon customer that they're going to roam onto, some other network. And
remember roaming guides for your cell phones?
Yes. They don't understand the geek part of it. So it's difficult for them to wrap their heads around it. But, that's part of the job, and that's part of why they pay me a few dollars a day is to hopefully keep that education and to keep their radios programmed as well as possible. But hey, I do got to say the one other claim to fame that we have here in Central North Carolina, and this goes back many years. I want to say to 1997, and y'all being computer geeks as well, I know y'all recognize this. Is that the infamous computer hacker Kevin Mitnick was caught here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I actually have the cell center, the local cell carrier center where they were doing most of the tracking of him from, is basically just about two to three blocks away from me here. They were using an ICOM 7000 hooked up to a laptop back then with a special software package that they were using to triangulate his location here in northwest Raleigh. And so that's our other claim. Bull Durham, Kevin Mitnick, and I think whatever else I said earlier, that's basically the guy who pushed his wife down the stairs. Unfortunately, that's our claim here in this area. So Scotty McCreary too, but
one of our watchers asks what you think about the quality of the current mobile and portable fleets, mostly from Motorola, I would imagine, in your area. But what do you think the quality is compared to, say, what they were, 10 or 12 years ago?
It's always, I always tell folks, you're never going to get it perfect, and you do the best you can. And every night I go to sleep with a little bit of gnawing at my gut, knowing, is there another tweak that I can do in our programming software to make our radios receive better or transmit better? And we do have Motorola has a system technologist that works with us to help us stay up to date on all their technical bulletins and all their, software updates and stuff like that. But it's always a bear. And I tell folks, radio is not really radio anymore. Our systems that we work with are voice over IP networks. That's basically what they are.
Yeah.
We have a radio, but it's a computer radio that transmits little ones and zeros from the antenna back to the tower site. And so you're always going to have some frustrations and some qualms, and anybody that's ever looked at Motorola programming software will tell you that there's 1,000 different fields, and all it takes is getting one of those small fields wrong, and it could cause some major issues. So, and all of the radio manufacturers these days like to make the end users beta testers in some form or fashion. That a lot of times we don't find stuff that is an issue in the firmware of the radios until they get mass deployed. And then somebody notices something, and we have to send it back up the chain. I mean, it's a never-ending process, and anybody that says that they've mastered Motorola radios is lying to you, or anybody else. If they say they mastered Harris radios or Kenwood or anybody else, they're lying to you, because these radios are ever evolving, and there's always a new feature. There's always a tweak. There's always some way to try to improve the settings. So yeah, it's. I say that for me, I'm okay with what we have in our fleet right now, but I'm never 100% satisfied, and I never will be, because I'm always wanting to make sure that our guys and gals that are out there 24 hours a day, or out there 12 hours a shift, get home safely to their families. So at the end of the day, my job's only done if they're able to do that, and if they're able to. And part of it also comes down to coverage areas as well, that you're never going to have 100% coverage. You do the best you can with what money you are allocated, but it's always a process where folks want a police officer to be able to respond faster to their house, but they don't want a tower in their backyard because they think their kids are going to get brain cancer from it or something else like that. It's a NIMBY. They're not in my backyard. But yet they want police to be able to communicate without any problems. And it's that tug of war where you have to balance out what's realistic and what you can, what you're able to provide. So
right.
it's That's
Well, it's going back to the days when when I first got in the fire department. We had HT 220s, slim lines, 2-channel radios, and they were great because you can use them as tire chalk. If you're if you ran out of if you're on the ladder truck, you just threw your radio in there to get the tires from rolling. But and they were they were built out of bricks, and it seemed that the quality kind of declined over the years, but I noticed that the APXs, they started to get a little bit tighter in their specs.
I mean, we haven't had too many issues with the ones that we use. Now, again, you talk about those older radios. Back in the day, the joke was the HT600 could be used as what they call an attitude adjuster. If now you can't do that these days. That was a different era. But that was the kind of the joke in house. Yeah. But the Apexes for us have been sure.
We used to use them to put stakes in for the parking signs.
There you go. There you go. There you go. The Apexes for us have done overall a good job. There's some, like I said, there's always going to be. There is no such thing as a perfect radio, but so far I'm happy to be carrying out. Like I said before, I carry an Apex 8000 XE, and I carry an Apex 6000 XE every day, and those two have served me well. But at the same time, I'm never 100% satisfied. I will always work to make them better. So yeah, that's where I stand on that.
Cool.
So, question for you. So we've talked about a lot of two-way radio communication. Mm-hmm. You've been in this hobby for a long time as a scanner enthusiast as well. What is your favorite radio and why? Favorite scanner?
Okay. Well, I think we discussed a little bit of this earlier, but I actually have three. I think basically I can divide it up into three of them there. The first one, just VHF, UHF, no trunking, is of course the Pro 2006. I mean, I have one of those, and I still to this day, I got to change out the display on it. My display is starting to go on me, so I got to get that done. It's obviously going to happen, but still the 2006 for my VHF, UHF non-trunk listening. To my just P25 usage, I still have a Pro 106. That's right, I have a Radio Shack Pro 106 that I use for just P25. This serves me well, and my third is the SDS 100. I mean, to this day, and I use that for a lot of my specialized, my DMR, my Nextend, my if I'm trying to find new targets, that type of deal, or trying to track down a target. So those three are my three primary. Now, I also, in my office each day, I keep a Home Patrol 2, just because I like looking at that display. I can look up and see the display and see what talk route's being talked on very easily with my old eyes, my senior eyes there as I get older. But yes, the Home Patrol 2 served me well as well. So I guess with those four are pretty much the my go-tos at the moment. Let me ask a question to y'all there. What do y'all's go to at the moment? Rich, what do you kind of consider to be your go-tos?
For the house, I got my SDSs here and my Home Patrol 2. When I'm out rail fanning, it's the 125 and usually my 436.
There you go.
Yeah, those are my relatively mostly go-to.
Yeah. I mean, I do.
I mean,
the SDS.
I know asking your children which ones you love the most, but it's a loaded question. I mean, it's a dangerous question. But,
my favorite radio when I got into this hobby, when I finally got a beefed out radio, was the 780 XLT.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
That was one of the favorite radios when I first got into this hobby. For rail fanning, it's the 125 AT, mm-hmm. and of course, the SDS 100 and 200 are definitely top on the list. I mean, some of the early whistlers. When I got one of those digital radios, the 500 and the 600. Mm-hmm. The 500 was easy to program, field program out. But yeah, I just, I mean, I've been lucky enough to be exposed to all these various radios, being in the field that I'm in right now. And just being able to, I mean, the 100 and 200 certainly are amazing radios. I mean, Uniden really did a decent job. Follow-up question: since you mentioned the SDSs, now you have a Motorola radio. Running them side by side. What's your thoughts? Running the SDS and the Motorola next to each other.
Oh, that's a dangerous question. You're trying to set me up from hate mail from the Uniden folks there, Jonathan. No, it's a totally different experience because
that's what I figured.
Of course, my Motorola radio is actually allowed to affiliate to the system, so it's a, and of course you're talking about the difference between an $8,000 radio and a $700 radio. So it's a little bit hard to, but I will say that the 100 has, and the 200, I have the 200 up right now. My 200 sitting in the kitchen listening to aviation at this moment in time. But the 100 holds its own, and for me, I love the ability that I can have that additional information, the detailed display, to where I can look and I can see a NAT code, or I can see a site name, or I can see some other crucial bit of info that might be that I might need. And people have asked me. I've actually used like my Home Patrol 2 with the analyze function. I've used that as a actual tool in the job in the past to help us as new sites got turned on in Viper. I can see, using the analyze feature, I can see the control channel, the site ID, all that other stuff, crucial stuff that helps out, so that we can update our Viper info and for our users. So, I mean, it's the SDS 100s and the 200 are great radios, and I hope that that Uniden is able to continue to keep up the kind of the process with updates and stuff like that. And I do see hopefully some exciting stuff coming out in the future, with just in terms of updates and stuff. Hopefully that'll continue to be something to work towards.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've seen, just being in this hobby, seeing it, the first digital radios. I mean, the digital quality on the scanner end is improved a lot over the years. Like, I was just having dinner at one of the local restaurants here, and I had it just amazes me, the police down here. It was the state police, the county sheriff, and the local, all saturated in one restaurant. So, I'm thinking to myself, boy, somebody could go right through town and nobody would know the difference. So I'm hearing their radios going off. I said, boy, I remember the first digital scanner that I had, and the audio was horrendous. And, now listening to like an STS and then hearing their radio, I'm saying, boy, sounds pretty good now. I mean, we've come a long way.
Hey, did you notice, Marshall, when your agency first switched to digital from analog? I assume you were there when they were still analog, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you remember the first time you started listeing to the digital, how bad it seemed?
Yes,
because there were no artifacts in the background.
Well, that's something that us Radio Shop geeks, we have this case study, or we like to think it's something psychological, in that the end users of our system, they hated digital when we first went P25. They were so used to analog for so many years, and now this is a system that ran both analog and digital for a while. But when we went full P25, everybody across the board, of course, went digital at that point, and everybody for the first 2 or 3 months complained nonstop. It was, this is the worst thing. You've got to go back. We get the radios are terrible. This is gonna be the worst thing ever. But now, officers, if you play them an audio clip from when we were using analog radio, they're like, man, is that from the 60s or something? That's it's horrible. It's amazing how just in the in a time span of a few years, that folks' attitudes. Of course, it's just younger people are so used to digital cell phones now that anything analog is foreign to them. And a lot of the officers are young officers now, so they're used to digital technology. So anything analog's just, they don't know what that is. And now I'm sounding like a senior citizen, but yeah, you're exactly right. No, they were saying, "Oh, this is the worst thing. I want to turn in my radio. I don't want this. I hate this." And now they're like, they can't live without it. They say, I could not live with a squelch tail. If you gave me a squelch tail now, I would hate it. So,
well, we had people that, after a year or so working on the digital system, they go back to the old analog channel for a week while they were doing some sort of upgrade. And they're like, oh, these old radios, they sound like crap.
No, it's the same.
And they're the same guys that complain about the digital.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So it's just something in the mentality. I think you get so used to it. It's kind of like I don't want to call it Stockholm syndrome or something, but that's kind of what it is that you just got so used to it that anything different is going to mess up your world. So
that's it. If it's different, it's bad.
Yes, of course. So it's definitely a different experience. When we went from XTSs, we went from XTS 5000s to Apexes, and that was a big issue because you get someone so used to, and I totally get it. It's muscle reflex, and you're so used to. People know the clicks. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Rich. When you turn it 3 clicks, and you know what channel you're on. And now with the new radios, it's totally different. Even though the channel knob is pretty much in the same place, it's just different, and I hate it. And I want to go back to using the prior generation, blah blah blah. So it happens. It's just this is evolving. Whether or not you want to do it, it happens. So
well, same thing when our guys, when our cops went from wheel guns to automatics. They're like, well, I can't see how many bullets I got left because I can't going around in circles. I got to take the clip out to see how many bullets I got left. Yeah.
If you shoot
got twice as many.
If you shoot that much, ought to be keeping track of it.
Yeah, exactly. So so what do you listen to other than your own agency?
Well, I'm lucky enough that I live far enough away from my job to where I'm right outside the receiving zone of the system I help manage and maintain. But I will say that daily I've gotten really into aviation. I'm really loving aviation, even though it's kind of become a pain in this area here in the Central North Carolina area. But I still love listening to it. I still love listening to railroads too. I've actually started listening to businesses too, which is for me is I don't know why. I never thought I'd be interested in doing this, but like Target and Home Depot and stuff like that. I have a couple of those stores that are basically just a block or two away from me, and so you can easily receive their walkie-talkie simplex communications pretty easily, and they can get pretty entertaining. I know the folks at the local Target, so they see me walk in with my agency shirt, and they know that I'm have agency credentials, so they know when I carry a Motorola radio inside the store, they know that I'm authorized to do that and everything. But they still go, man, your radio is so much larger than ours. Why do you have that big radio? And it's just it's business, and it's aviation and rail fanning. I mean, I don't get to get some of the great photographs like Jonathan does. I hope to. I've got my DSLR camera, but I need to get back out there and start doing photography again. Maybe since I've got some off time coming up here with not being on call the next couple of weeks, I'll get back out and try to get some of that great photography done as well. But yeah, those are my big ones now. And I like listening to see what new talk groups come up on any of the local systems, and we have some changes going on here in Central North Carolina that are going to be interesting for folks in the next 6 or 8 months. So we'll see how they all plan out. I'm not allowed to
secrets now, or they.
There's some stuff that I can't talk about, but
it's just between us and the couple hundred.
Oh yes, there you go. But it's let's just say that monitoring will be a fun hobby from now until early next year and all that fun stuff. So yeah, I listen to a little bit of everything. So
cool. Yeah, we always tease that. Yeah, we're going to be the SDS 1000's coming out next month, and
yeah. Oh yes.
Mm-hmm. We're just waiting for that to pop up on Radio Reference.
Oh yeah.
The scanner guys announced the SDS 1000.
Well, we got to be careful. We don't want to pull Universal here.
Oh no! Now you're gonna get us in trouble, Jonathan. But
yeah. Oh my God, you mentioned it. The big debacle that happened, and thankfully it wasn't us.
Yeah,
that wasn't us.
Not this time, anyway.
No, I mean that was the coolest experience. I know Paul's health was all over the place. But being able to announce the SDS 100 was pretty neat. We did that at Dayton.
Being able to have it and to share it with people.
Yeah,
because everything was so super secret, and then when they finally let us loose with it, it was so great.
I mean, I don't think it's any secret that I was one of the folks also with some other folks that might be around here at the moment that helped make that reality.
Yes.
I was honored to work with y'all and to work with Paul. And like I said, I mean, Paul had his quirks. He could be he had his own things. And I think he also was trying to find his niche in terms of guitar playing and stuff like that. He was trying to find, and it still to this day kind of saddens me that he was, and I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but that I still think he has so much to give to our hobby and everything.
Yeah. But he was grounded in that he had stuff other than just radio stuff.
Yeah. That's right. And that's what I took from his passing too, is that, I was spending way too much time doing, and this is the diehard. I will still be the radio guy until I turn old and gray and grumpy. Tell kids to get off my yard, but I had to find some balance as well. And so when he passed, I just took that as kind of one of the omens to find that balance. A lot of y'all are friends with me on social media. That I bought a house at right about the same time that he passed, and are not too separate a time frame. And so concentrating on the house, getting that up to par has also been a good side. And hey, I got to find places for all the radios, so that's been a good little hobby as well. So even though I don't do much on the forums anymore, I mean, I haven't posted Radio Reference in probably close to a year or over a year now. And it's not because I have any hard feelings. It's just because I needed to find that balance between what I love doing in my daytime life and what I was getting paid for, and what I was doing in my home life. So we all have to find that balance and that time away, and that way you don't lose the love of what you're truly gifted at doing or being a part of. So,
as long as it's still fun, I'm going to keep on doing it.
Yeah, that's right.
When that stops, then it's on to something else. So
that's right. So
So Glenn writes, is the SDS 1000 the scanner that can listen to the encrypted channels? So
no.
Not gonna happen. So
unfortunately. We get that question all the time.
Oh yes.
The thing was, when I moved down here, I came from Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
It was mostly all analog. We had a few cities or towns that were running UHF digital, and usually on the police side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I came down here, and I couldn't get over how much digital. I mean, it was crazy. And I'm still trying to find my balance for monitoring scanners at home. The problem that I'm having is, are you familiar with Rowan County?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So the town that I'm in is dispatched regionally, like everything else in this county, practically.
Right.
So, I was spoiled rotten back in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
I just monitor my local city or town and just those handful of frequencies. Now I got to listen to everybody, their uncle, and the other town, because they're all the regional system.
And it's that small town experience that like Rich was saying before, the sheriff has a brother that's the deputy on his side, and you still got a lot of that small town feel for your area, and they built up regional dispatch centers because for them, monetary wise, that makes sense. But it makes it more of a chore to listen to. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I've still, I've listened to a couple of. I've expanded out some of my listening. I'm trying to find the proper balance because I used to be able to do it by community, and program in, this town that's somewhat busy, but these other towns that are not so busy. So you get like this really good balance. You're not getting bombarded by so much communication that it becomes noise. You get a good balance. And that's, I'm still a year and a couple of months into this house. I'm still trying to find that balance. And it's just.
And I don't think that's, and I don't want to say that's unique to your area, North Carolina. I think just because of the nature of the radio systems that are in use today, that's become more of an issue because with hundreds of channels with channel capacity, you have everything gets fragmented just that much more. And everybody wants to have their 3, 4, 5 ops channels, their own channels assigned just to them, or they want to have, there's more islands out there. The systems in use give you the ability to create more islands, which it makes it easier to cross communicate to do that interoperability, but you still have those islands out there, and it makes them easier to listen to. So you have to, and gosh knows the only way that you really could get through it is to do what Rich has done there behind him, which is to have all the radios and just divide it up, have one talk group in every radio. I mean, that's the way to do it right there, because otherwise, and I try to tell folks, when I program radios for police chiefs in the past and for sheriffs and stuff like that, I try to tell them, it's easy to think that you can drink from the fire hose and listen to everything, but you're going to be overwhelmed. I'm like, pick a few monitoring targets and make those your specific targets, just in terms of having interest in listening to them. But if you try to listen to everything, like you're saying, it'll become noise and you'll tune out and you'll miss anything relevant that you would want to have heard in the first place. So that's kind of it's a catch-22. It makes monitoring easier because we have access to so much information about these systems these days, but also at the same time, there's just so much to listen to that it becomes overwhelming at times. So we're lucky in that regard that we don't have everything locked down, but at the same time, it does make balancing everything a lot more of an effort.
We got a question from Evan. Asks what your opinion of the APX Next radios is.
Oh Lord, how should I say this and be diplomatic? It's a for me personally, it's a solution in search of a problem. I feel its price range is priced out of the range of anything practical for most public safety agencies. It locks the whoever's doing the radio maintenance, it locks them down to having to use to only be able to do change radio code plug changes or radio template changes via Motorola's online. You have to subscribe to their online software package, and so there's more of an investment there because you have to pay for licensing for that. I just don't see where I understand that it's kind of a cool device having a smartphone and a radio all in one. It's got the sleek form factor, whatever, but I don't see it. I mean, you can't take it inside of a burning building as a firefighter. You're not going to use it like you would an XE into a structure fire, obviously. It may be good for some chiefs or for some higher ups, but I see difficulty in the rank and file adapting to it. I understand it's the neatest thing, but it's kind of a solution in search of a problem at this moment in time.
So it's just not particularly practical for.
It really isn't. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to bang on Motorola. I mean, you always try to innovate. You try to come up with some new stuff, and you try to give the industry what it needs. But I just don't see where a police officer has just gotten out of the academy, how you're going to assign them a $10,000 to $12,000 radio, and it's something that if they get into a foot chase and they've lost that $10,000 to $12,000. I mean, it's a little bit hard to swallow price wise, and again, it just doesn't offer any features that are not, to me, that are not currently there in the standard Apex platform. So,
all right. So, what about FirstNet?
FirstNet, I'm going to be a cautious. I've seen the pros and cons. I understand the pluses and minuses of it. I do understand the need for when everything hits the fan that you want your public safety to have first access to, if nothing else, reliable cell communications. But in the past, to me, it seems like LMR has filled that gap. Yeah. For the most part, that when cellular goes down, at least we have some form of LMR communications, whether that be public safety or you fall back on the ever-present just ham radio type of deal. Yeah. But I'm waiting to see. I see anytime that you get a commercial entity involved, it's going to be a lot more obviously commercialized end product. Yeah. So I'm waiting to see what AT&T long term will do with it. But
I kind of think it's going to be great for data, and I don't think it's going to be particularly practical for voice.
There you go. Well, that's what we've always said is that hey, give us a radio like an Apex with the data function on it can be used with band 14 with the FirstNet setup, and give me the LMR on the regular two-way side of it, and that fulfills both of those gaps. And I have the fast data throughput, but I also have the reliable of an LMR system that's designed robust. This got backups at the tower sites for generators and stuff like that. Where sometimes, let's be honest, a lot of the cell phone towers don't have the same backup capability that an LMR system does. So, it's a balancing act. I mean, like you're saying, I see it for data, but I don't see it taking the business away from LMR anytime soon. There's just too much invested in LMR, land mobile radio, for those that may not know, in the regular two-way industry. There's just too much areas have too much money invested in two-way communications, LMR, as it is, and if it becomes a big part, it won't do it until many years down the road on the voice side. So, yeah.
All right, well, you ought to do a little business and then start getting into questions there, Big J.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can do that. Let's let me just get the we'll do this is a midway point now, so let's pop up the slideshow. We'll keep it so we can see us over on the side. Isn't that pretty neat? The three of us there. If you're looking for a scanner or you get scanner questions, certainly give us a call at 1-800-722-6637. We're open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. You can email us at support@scannermaster.com. Who is that? Scannermaster, that is. That's our sponsor of tonight's show. You can shop them online 24/7 at scannermaster.com. Also, next week's broadcast, we haven't announced what the topic of discussion will be, but it's Wednesday, September the 16th, 2020, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific, right here on our YouTube channel. And also, you want to make sure that you keep those stupid scanner tricks and shack photos heading our way. Email those over to thescannerguys@gmail.com. That's thescannerguys@gmail.com. Railfan, make sure you check out my blog, trainaficionado.com. That's the website. And you can also follow Train Aficionado on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you tune in to our monthly show on the YouTube account for Train Aficionado, which is Train Aficionado Live, the first Monday of every month, hosted by myself and Rich Carlson. And don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to Scanner Master on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And always make sure you follow and like and subscribe to the Scanner Guys as well on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And if you're watching us tonight on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button.
Press that button. Do it now.
Do it now.
And don't forget, if you're watching us on Facebook, start getting used to watching us on YouTube, because after the end of this month, we will no longer be simulcasting our regular broadcasts on Facebook. So, we got some questions. Pam asks, what do I need to get into digital scanning of the 700 megahertz P25 system that they use locally? And can they program it without using a computer? Can she program it herself since she knows the frequencies? So, we'll let our guest answer this one.
Oh, you thought a dangerous one.
Put you on the spot.
There you go. Good to see Pamela have interest there, and it's good to have her interested in the hobby. I will say that the radio systems in use today are very technical, and they're a little bit involved in terms of getting started in programming one. So in theory, yes, you could program a scanner yourself. I will say, however, that the fact that most of the systems these days, you have a lot of not only tower site frequencies that you have to worry about programming in, but you also have a lot of talk groups, which are another component. You have to have both of them to actually be able to listen to the conversations. And this is where I actually have to give a plug to Scanner Master. It really is because they have the great service where they can optimize a scanner for you if you buy it from them before it gets delivered to you for your local area. But Pamela, I would say, in theory, yes, you could program it by hand, but I could tell you that it's light years easier if you use a computer, or if you have someone near you that is a radio geek, someone that if you go to the radio reference forums and you look through the forums and you find someone in your local state, there's individual state forums there at Radio Reference, and you'll usually find someone that you can search and find some more details and find someone that's knowledgeable that would have the information to help you get started.
Wow. Did I leave the volume up on that train?
There you go.
Olive and Aaron all night.
I can barely hear it with the headphones.
Oh, I can hear it.
But no, it's definitely us that have to actually manage these radio systems. It takes a lot of training for us to manage it, and just to listen to it these days is still a little bit of an uphill climb. We tried to make it easier with the scanners that are out there these days, such as the Home Patrol. With the databases that come preloaded, but you still want to make sure those are up to date because you have radio system changes all the time. They're not, and I'm not trying to scare you away from any type of hand programming. It's a great way to learn the ins and outs of how systems really operate. But it is also a little bit involved. Caveat emptor or buyer beware, or just kind of do some research, and hopefully you'll find someone around you that if you not feeling 100% confident to do it, hey, you may already be advanced and you may be able to do it and have it done just like that, and make the rest of us look like we know nothing at all in the hobby. For the most folks, it does take a little bit of that time of a learning curve of learning the ins and outs. So that's
it is a great question. I had a customer asking about why they would want to get a Home Patrol 536 type scanner with a database. And my explanation to him was that gets you up going quickly. Yeah. Because you don't need to know anything about radio to get that set up. And then as you start learning, especially with the 536, you can start doing your own programming, custom program down the road. But at least now you can listen to the scanner, because so many people, they'll buy a scanner and they can't program it. They get frustrated and they either return it or put it in a closet. At least now you can listen to it, enjoy it. And then as you learn, you can start getting into the details.
Right. Yeah, that's 100% correct.
Yeah. And so like when they first came out, the Home Patrols, I was like, oh, this is not for me, but it wasn't intended for me. It was intended for Joe Blow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that comes down to that conversation that we've had a couple of times on here. We were part of that beta test for the Home Patrol 1. And Rich was like, what the hell is this? And then, because he wasn't working at Scanner Master at this point.
Right.
And when I was a part of that group, when I was part of the Home Patrol 1, I said, this is perfect for Bob getting into the hobby or Mary getting to the hobby, because that was the big hang up for Bob and Mary. They weren't radio geeks. So when they looked at something like a 996, they were like, whoa, I don't know what this is going on. Put in a zip code and you're up and running. Or you get that person to kind of move over a little bit to the software based of it. Sentinel software is not big and scary. It's relatively simple. So I totally, when I was a part of that beta test, I said, this is what our customers want. And I was like, and then when I did that beta test, I envisioned myself as Bob and Mary. I figured, this is not me, the scanner expert, using it. I have to treat this as I'm the everyday consumer that's just getting into the hobby.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was still looking at it from the scanner geek point of view, and it's like, this ain't for me. And then I was talking to Paul on the phone one day, and he said, no, it isn't for you. It's for your neighbor next door. And
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I think it took us all a little while to wrap our heads around it.
Yeah.
And once we understood what Paul was aiming for, it definitely made sense. I mean, it was what the industry in the hobby needed at that time.
Look where it is now. I mean, it begat the 436 and the 536 and the TRXs and the STSs. So absolutely. All right, so Chris, who is normally our first poster every week, but he got bumped into second or third this week. So Chris, you have to start. Get things earlier where we expect to see you first.
I think you look at the timestamp. He was our first for the live broadcast. When we posted, whenever this posted live, she posted a comment on the thread. So Chris is
it just appeared first. So Chris got there first. Okay, well at least I feel better then. Yeah. Again, change is bad. So Chris has got to be first. So, so how come on a scanner he's only able to hear the Coast Guard station, but not the boat? And I think Joe answered that question pretty quickly after his post. That was right on the spot. The coast station is using a high-powered base station, and the boat's probably further away using either a low-power portable or a mid-power mobile radio or maritime radio. So, you're going to be listening to the base stations, and they're going to go out for 150 miles. When I lived in the north suburbs of Chicago, I was pretty much halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee, and I could hear the Coast Guard station talking from South Shore of Chicago, which was 60 miles away, but I couldn't hear a boat across the street. So,
it's just transmitter power and also, something that always comes into play about it, when I first got into the hobby many years ago, a wise Elmer once told me, he said that radio reception is, 60% of it is the antenna, 30% of it's the radio, and the other 10% is just blind luck. I mean, you have to be in the right spot at the right time. So there's going to, sometimes you're going to have that luck where you're going to be able to hear stuff. And so that doesn't mean that there might be a day when propagation is up and the signals are bouncing, and you might hear that ship to ship communication. You just never know. So never count it totally out. Just know that it's two different transmitter power levels is what you're really looking at there.
So Glenn is happy to see you out here tonight. And Barry asks, he's
such a big comment. It's
like, I got to kind of look up over the thing. Barry recommends just get a phase 2 scanner for everybody. Since so many agencies are switching over to phase 2, if you get a phase 2 scanner, you're probably pretty well covered, which is not a bad thing. And I tell a lot of people that even if they're using analog if they're using analog now, they very well could be using digital in the future. So if you get a phase 2 scanner, you're pretty well covered, even if they are using phase 1 now, because like you said before, your agency is looking to go phase 2 eventually. You have a phase 2 capable scanner, you're covered. If they don't change the frequencies, you probably won't even have to change the programming of the radio.
That's what I was going to say. You're future-proofing yourself is basically what you're doing there.
Yeah.
Now, there are those rare occasions when, like what y'all have talked about with rail scanning, if your only interest is rail scanning, doing something like an SDS 100 might be overkill for you if that's your first foray into the hobby. The 125 that y'all are, I know for a fact, the 125 is considered to be a kind of these days kind of a standard bearer in rail scanning and everything. So it gives you the memory space and everything else that you need, and does a great job reception wise. And it's not a break the bank type of receiver either. It's affordable and still gets you in the door. So while you don't want to sell yourself short, don't overprice. If you're only going to be driving around your neighborhood, don't buy yourself a Lamborghini. I mean, it's, that being said, if you have the money for a Lamborghini, and ain't no problem wrong with doing that, but just kind of this is where you always want to do your research into what you're going to be, your listening targets are.
All right, so Barry asks, he's got a question. What do we all recommend for an antenna that can cover wideband with 800 for outdoors? I assume he's talking about the Tram 1411, which is the low-cost discount. We sell that as the Skyband antenna. It's very similar, but he's leaning more towards a Yagi antenna. So a discount antenna works equally well in all directions and on a wide variety of frequencies. It doesn't work spectacularly well on any specific frequency. And again, there's no directionality. So if you get a specialty antenna, it'll work really well on certain frequency ranges, but it'll work poorly on other frequency ranges. And you get a Yagi antenna, it'll work great that way, but it won't work off the sides.
And the typical thing that we recommend, if you have multiple scanners like Rich, you can do more than one antenna and assign certain scanners to certain antennas. I've been in this house for a year and a couple of months. I do not have an outdoor antenna as of right now. I'm thinking, I'm not having any issues with 800 megahertz by any means, whether it be, Viper or the local Rowan County trunk system, or even some of the neighboring trunk systems. So I'm thinking, definitely it's going to be some sort of railroad antenna. I'm going to go for something that's going to work really well on that, because I spend a lot of time listening to that now.
Yeah, that's where, you just, again, you do your research, figure out what you're going to be listening to the most, what's going to be your most used listening range, and going from there, and knowing also where the tower sites are located in relation to where you're located at is important as well, because it may come down to the Yagi's better off for you. Or if you're close enough and you're getting, you don't mind the loss in directionality, then you can do a discone or some other related discone type product that will do you all around. You won't be, again, like what Rich said, you're missing out on the directionality reception, but hey, it's kind of, you give up one thing for another. So that's kind of where you have to go with it.
All right, so Jason writes, what new digital formats will the SDS 100 include? And he might have been talking about when we were talking about the SDS 1000. And so that's the SDS 1000 is going to include every digital mode known to man, plus the digital encryption, and it'll even have a built-in back scratcher and bagel maker.
The comments made by Rich Carlson are those his alone.
His alone. That's right.
Yeah. But if he actually did mean the SDS 100, so obviously it'll do P25 phase 1 and 2 right out of the box, as well as AM and FM. And you can buy the paid updates for NXDN, DMR, Moto Turbo, and for Pro Voice. So if they're using any of those modes in your area, you can buy that update. And if you've got the radio now and they switch over to one of those modes in the future, you can have that added to that radio party at any time. So
yeah, I mean, and like I know Rich and Jonathan both know is that the rail service, some point, maybe several years down the road, but they'll look, obviously next gen is a big consideration. It's already being used in places. So next gen is always something to look at, possibly considering if you have that option available to you.
Yeah.
And DMR, let me just tell you, you don't realize how many business users use DMR just in doing general searches until you actually have that option enabled in your radio. And then it becomes a whole new world of just trying to find out, okay, who's using this, who's using that. It becomes even more interesting, a new kind of sub hobby within the big hobby.
Well, my 536, I got one of my 536s that all I do with that for the most part is listen to the DMR channel that the golf course that I live on uses for their maintenance.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
It's, that's, and there's so much of that out there with DMR. It really is.
And in our area, what we're seeing is that a lot of the users, not even 10, 15 years ago, were using LTR systems. They were using old LTR systems. Those systems are being transitioned over, or being replaced with DMR, some flavor of it, whether it be Moto Turbo, Next Gen, or some combination, or that type of deal. So now's the time to, if you're like one of those geeks that love kind of hunting out new targets, listening targets, just that's all the fun of it is seeing those systems that were LTR now being transitioned over to DMR and now have new all new types of opportunities there for you.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the things we have out here is we have about 6 months ago or so, a new NXDN system came online that I discovered just by searching things out. And I really hadn't played with a lot of NXDN in the past, but I started listening to this system, and then I noticed that they had the radio tags built in the system, and it's coming across the radio. So now it's saying, Bus 11 and John and stuff like that, and it makes it great to identify. I wish all the radio systems had that. So, all righty. So Scott is in West Texas. And Lubbock area. It's so flat that he can see the back of your own head. Boy, I tell you what, it's I living in the hills. It's I can't imagine that anymore. He says, what kind of outside antenna would we recommend? So when you're looking for an outside antenna, what's more important is the elevation and how high you can get the antenna and the coax you have connected to it. I think that's much more important than the antenna itself. So, a disc cone works really well for most people. It's a good basic antenna. But you put that disc cone at ground level and put a piece of cheap coax on it, it's going to work like crud. But you take that same antenna and you put it 20 feet above your house with some good LMR 400, and it'll work spectacularly well. You can put a crappy antenna way up with good coax, it'll work much better than a great antenna at ground level with bad coax.
Yeah, the coax is just as important as the antenna.
And not only the coax, but the connectors as well. Make sure you weatherproof the connectors, because all it takes is a few storms to come in, and if you don't have your connections tightened up and sealed up, then you're going to have all times you're going to quickly notice that your reception is going to go down tremendously.
Oh yeah, even on my antennas, I live in an HOA, so I have to go. My antennas are all up in the attic, but once a year I go up there and just tighten the connections down because they can work themselves loose. All right, so Mark asks, do we know anything about the PEG system? I'm not familiar with that term. Are you? It's not a regional system down in that area?
No.
Okay. So Mark, if you can give us a little bit more on that one, I don't know quite what you're talking about there. So if anybody knows what a PEG system is. let us know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. So let's see here. So Randall asks, what new digital scanner would suggest for the Raleigh, North Carolina area? Gee, I don't know. I wouldn't know anything about that. No, nobody here knows about Raleigh, right?
Well, Randall, it's good to have you ask. It's good to see another radio fanatic from this area here. Being a Garner resident, which is just south of Raleigh, I will say that Wake County is in the middle of moving to a P25 solution. They've been using they've been using kind of like a Windows XP type of radio system, and they're now moving it to Windows 10 if you want to equate it to computers. And they're still in the progress of doing that. They're still in what we call a 4.1 format for a little while longer while they get everybody moved over to P25. The surrounding areas all use P25 systems. And so pretty much any one of the current line of scanners would be great for this area. Like I was saying earlier, if you're home a lot and you don't travel a lot, the HP2 is a good solution that will get you future-proof, because like I said earlier, Viper, which is Wake County, is a secondary user to Viper, not a primary user. But you would have that future-proof capability with TDMA down the road once Viper decides to use TDMA. And again, I'm not saying they're going to do it tomorrow. So don't all of a sudden panic and think that they're going to be switching to TDMA tomorrow. They're not. It's definitely going to be years down the road. But, just kind of future-proofing yourself. So like a home-based scanner like the SDS 200, if you like really base scanners, or the Home Patrol 2 might be something for you. If you need a portable solution, the SDS 100 is a great fit for this area. It does a great job, and the databases are pretty much spot on. So, so the SDS 100 for portable, and my feelings would be the SDS 200 if you can afford it. But if you wanted to step down just a little bit, go with the Home Patrol 2 and for the home, and since it's easy to update, I don't think you'll be sorry with that purchase. I use a Home Patrol 2 every day, and I have a Home Patrol 1 at my home, and I keep a Home Patrol 2 at my office, and they both do splendidly here in this area. Central North Carolina.
How's the simulcast interference out there?
So far, we've been very, very lucky. For the majority of the areas, now no radio system's perfect, no area is perfect, and no scanner's perfect. But I've been really, really happy with the way how, again, the SDS 200, the 100 both handle simulcast wonderfully in this area. It's for me, I haven't noticed it being a headache as it once was. Years ago, when we were battling some of the early days of dealing with the vocoders and getting the signals to balance out and everything. But we've been very lucky in this area, very blessed that it's not as bad as it could be. Now, each user's case scenario is individual. I don't want to make it sound like it's perfect nirvana here. There's gonna be places where you might have issues, but I've been very lucky, I think. At least in this area, to not have that be a headache as it once was. The scanners themselves have kind of done dramatic leaps and bounds towards making that a headache of the past a lot of the times.
All right, so we got some clarification on PEG. Glenn writes, it's a preparatory emergency groups, two-way radio system designed by so it looks like it's some sort of one of those survivalist thing, so prepper thing. So I don't know anything about that stuff. I don't get into that kind of stuff. So they have a whole another subset of stuff out there. So there's some interesting stuff comes up with some of the survivalist guys, but unfortunately that's not anything that I'm familiar with.
Oh yeah.
So Rich, he's one of my neighbors. His daughter's a firefighter, Carrie.
Oh yeah. So, Carrie's just 10 minutes down the road from us, 10 to 12 minutes down the road. So I know that. In fact, I actually the Radio Shack that I got started in so many years ago was actually in Cary, one of two locations. I started one location, moved over to the other one, became an assistant manager, and then moved over to a location in Raleigh. So I've known Cary all my life. Great town. So yeah, they operate their own P25 system over there, and the fire department does a great job over there. They just got through opening up Station 9 for their fire station, so they got a brand spanking new fire station over there. But yeah, great city and great town over there.
So is Raleigh, Durham, that area, is that an expanding, growing area, or is it a kind of steady?
It is. Now, of course, COVID's kind of put a hold on everybody, I think, right now. But we still, we have a whole lot of. We're known here for this area. We have a section of businesses between Raleigh and Durham that's kind of known as RTP, or Research Triangle Park. And that's where you have a lot of the businesses like SAS, and where you have a lot of these companies, IBM. A lot of these tech companies are in what we call RTP, or Research Triangle Park, which is in between Raleigh and Durham. And the reason why we call this area the Triangle is because you have three cities. You have Raleigh, and then to the south you have Chapel Hill, and then up to the north you have Durham. And those make up a triangle there. So that's what you get when you have and of course you always have competing college teams, because around here it's all college basketball country. So you have NC State and Raleigh. And then, of course, in Durham, you have Duke. And then, of course, in Chapel Hill, you have UNC. So you have it's never you always have some folks battling back and forth. But we're very lucky. A lot of folks love living here. Like I said, I've lived here most of my life. I actually spent the first 9 years of life in upstate South Carolina, in Anderson, which is where which is kind of, it's funny. It's kind of a sad story, but Chadwick Boseman, the guy who played, in the last Marvel movies, was the Black Panther. He actually came from Anderson, came from the town that I grew up in, and that my great grandfather was mayor of. So it was sad to kind of lose him, to see kind of a local guy who did great things kind of get lost. Yeah. But I lived the first 9 years of my life in Anderson. Then my family moved up here to Central North Carolina. I've been up here for the majority of my life ever since, except for a short spell living in southeastern Kentucky, extreme southeastern Kentucky, in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. Let me tell you, you want to talk about buying a Ferrari and not being able to only drive it through a school zone? When you have digital scanners and you move to an area like the mountains of Kentucky and there's no digital there whatsoever, you kind of go backwards in time. It's kind of a whole shift where you have a lot of my gear was collecting mothballs for a little while I was living there. I lived there for a couple of years, and hey, I love the state, wonderful, beautiful state, but I am glad to be back here in Central North Carolina. And
well, I know all about that. My wife grew up in Elkhorn City. So,
okay, yeah.
No running water, the whole bit,
Well, I was going to say, Rich, I actually had ex-in-laws that lived in Des Plaines, right outside of Chicago, and I went up there to visit them several years ago. And being a Southern guy, I was just so jealous of the fact that they could leave their cars in their driveway, walk one street over in their neighborhood, get on the train and drive that into downtown Chicago, and not have to drive anywhere during the week. And I'm sitting in traffic jams on I-40 every day for an hour and a half, and I'm going, God, can't we do this here? But our setup is not it's not kind of conducive to having that type of metro transit yet. So maybe one day we'll get there. But
one day,
one day.
So we got another question from Dave. He's in the San Diego area. Is it possible to follow P25 system with his 996 P2 with any success? Specific, that's their regional communication system out there. So with the 996 P2, it's all a matter of location, and especially location. So you can make a 996 P2 work pretty well with digital simulcast with some help. A directional antenna will help. Sometimes a lesser antenna or using an attenuator. I told a guy, take a paper clip and unfold it and take off and disconnect your disc cone antenna, stick the paper clip in the antenna connector and see how that works. He called me back the next day and said, the radio works perfectly. It works like a champ with a paper clip instead of his $300 antenna that he put on the roof. So there are things you can do to make a non-SDS scanner work on a simulcast system. And I think we've done shows specifically on that. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get that radio to ignore all the towers except for one. And then it looks to the scanner like it's just a regular single site system. And it will often work well. The problem is you're getting multiple sites hitting your radio at the same time, and the scanners were not designed to handle that type of thing. They're all just ones and zeros, and the ones from tower A cancel out the zeros from tower B, and you get a big old mess.
Yeah, it's a blended soup of binary code. That's basically what it is.
I like that.
And I get asked all why does the Motorola radio work? Well, it works because it's only listening to the one tower that's affiliated to at that moment, meaning that it's ignoring all those other interference streams that are coming from elsewhere. Whereas your scanner can't do that. Your scanner has to listen to everything that comes through as opposed to just one tower that is hooked on.
And plus you're using a $7,000 radio that was purposely designed for that specific type of system versus a $500 scanner or $400 scanner that was designed to do a lot of everything. So it does make a difference. And sometimes you get what you pay for. And that's why the SDSs are more expensive than other scanners, because there was a lot of engineering that went into it and a lot of testing and a lot of other, things. Yeah, Dale writes, coming soon at Scanner Master, the paperclip antenna. So
there you go.
we actually have.
Don't give Rich
the idea. Yeah. Oh, I tell you, that would be probably the fluffiest antenna that we have on the site.
We would get it painted in police black.
Well, if you want to go with the same type of deal as the paperclip antenna, you can consider the old cell phone sticker antennas that you'd be able to stick on the back of the cell phone. That whole sham that was going on for so many years. So,
we actually had one of our customers. We have a little antenna we call race antenna. It's about a 1 inch tall BNC antenna, and basically what it is, it's a paper clip connected to a BNC connector with a piece of rubber around the top. And he bought one of those things to use of the races, and he was having bad simulcast on his other scanner. And he put it on his 325, and he said it worked like a champ.
Oh yeah!
So he bought 5 more of them to give to his buddies. So, and apparently Randall's on Old Stage Road. One side's Garner and the other side is Raleigh. So you guys are neighbors. So
he's just a few minutes away then from where I'm at here. So they found me. I've now got to move again. I've got to hide more.
Yeah, well, it won't be too hard. Unfortunately, these days there's no such thing as privacy anymore.
That's right. And I'm here for 30 years. I've signed up for this place for 30 years, so I'm not going anywhere. So
Donnie's 30 or 40 miles from Elkhorn City. So like I said, my wife grew up there, and she grew up in a holler. She's a holler chick, and in fact, in the same holler. Do you know who Patty Lovelace is?
Oh yeah, yeah.
She was neighbors. They went to school together as kids.
Awesome.
So
Oh yeah.
It's a small. Talk about small town.
where I lived at was only maybe 25 minutes from where Loretta Lynn grew up in Butcher's Hollow.
Yeah.
So that was a tourist spot near where I was at. So.
Oh yeah, we've been there, and in fact, when we were up at the original house up in Butcher Holler, it's her brother who owns it now and runs it as a kind of a tourist thing. You pay $5 and he takes you around, shows it to you. Well, we're there, and he's looking at my wife, and he's like, "I know you," and he's like, and she's like, "No, you can't." And she says, "Yeah, your uncle is this guy. It used to be the postmaster in there," and he said, "Yeah."
Holy cow!
Oh, yeah. So they were like old buddies. So
yeah.
So yeah, and Patty Lovelace is a ham operator too. So
that's right. She was.
Yeah. I think she had a 4-call.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So, yeah. It's old home week.
That's right. But no, like I said, I love the history of it. I love the kind of being able to go hiking and stuff like that in Kentucky. But give me the ability to, like, we didn't even have a super Walmart where I was at. We had just a regular Walmart. So, you didn't have a mall. You didn't have anywhere, so for me, I love being kind of back in that, being able to have some type of large. Now, of course, I can't go anywhere at the present time, but hey.
Right. Well, my wife told me we will not live anywhere that's not within an hour of an Apple store. So.
There you go.
I think that's more your request, though, too.
Well, yeah. Where do you think she buys my gifts at?
I think that's more your request.
Yeah. So, well, that's pretty much it for the questions we got. Jonathan?
Yes.
You guys got anything?
So this was a lot of fun. You're the second guest that we had on, Marshall.
I feel honored. Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Thank y'all for having me. This has been a blast. I hope we can do it again at some point in the future. Y'all caught me at a good time, as right now I'm working 1 week home and then 1 week in my shop, kind of to help minimize exposure to possibly anything. So I'm working from home this week. So it just kind of everything worked out well. But no, this has been a blast. I know we've all corresponded over emails and forums and everything over the years, and we've all worked together in other aspects of scanner stuff, and so it's good to finally just sit down and, like I said, y'all ever find yourselves here in this area, give me a holler.
We do. So what is it like for you? Everybody is getting this experience from working from home. What is it like for you being, in your industry?
Right. Yeah. It has definitely been a change. Luckily, I've got a great coworker that when I'm not there, he is there. So we alternate. That's to kind of minimize either of us being. But because we normally would have to physically touch, and we normally do have to physically touch radios on an everyday basis, it does create some challenges that way. Luckily, we both have balanced out that workload. One of the other things that we have to do in our job, and I had to actually get a GROL license, a General Radio Telephone Operator's license, to be able to do this, is that we certify our radar units for our police department. So that's also kind of created a challenge that we have to balance out, because anytime that a squad car is brought in, especially if it has a cage in the back, we have to disinfect it and get it, just COVID precautions and stuff like that. It has to sit for a while before we can actually do anything within it. And so we've all had to make adjustments. Like I said, I'm lucky and I'm blessed that I've got a great team around me. My boss has been very understanding. And so, when I work from home here, I work off my laptop, and I've got VPN access to all of our radio templates and everything else that I need access to. And there's been times when I've had to do a radio template change where my coworker will just email me the code plug. I'll do the changes and then ship them right back to him, and he then reloads the code plug into the radio. So we have this good tag team process set up that we kind of call each other the road warriors, that Hawk and Animal, that we're able to balance each other out very well. And so it's been an interesting experience, one that I would not have personally signed up for, but still at the same time, you make adjustments and you do the best you can with what you have. Yeah. So, and luckily
now you know what to expect in case anything like this happens again.
That's right. And luckily our organization's been very supportive as well. So, I'm very blessed in that regard. And like I said, that still gives me opportunity to work on the weekends. I do AV work for my church and for all the audio video stuff that we do there. So that I've been able to balance that out as well. So I think for y'all, I've had to learn a learning experience for y'all as well. And thankfully we've all come out of this so far ahead of the curve. And so hopefully that just continues. So, but yeah, it's definitely been a learning experience. So I will say that.
Yeah,
Cool.
we definitely want to have you on again as a reoccurring guest. I mean, you bring so much to the table. I mean, you just being on the technical side of things, and just seeing the latest and greatest coming out radio wise, it's certainly a huge asset to the scanner community.
I always tell folks my opinions are mine only, not representative of anybody else or any other agency or department or anything else. And so, but I do hope that, and I learned, and I know y'all did too, that many years ago when we first got started in this, it's always the pay it forward type of mentality. You always want to leave the hobby a little bit better than when you first entered it, and that if you can help other folks gain the same amount of enjoyment out of it that I've been able to gain by my Elmers, that's definitely worth it. I had there's a great guy around here, Kurt Phillips, W4CP, who was the one that first got me started really in the hobby many years ago. So, and he's, again, folks in this area, in the Central North Carolina area, definitely do a Google search, look up the Tar Heel Scanner Shortwave group. They usually meet about once a month, but they're not right now because of everything going on. But they still have their online presence. I've taken a step back from that just to balance out life and work and hobby and everything. But there's still a great bunch of guys, and if you need information, they're the guys to go to. So definitely the Tar Heel Scanner Shortwave group in Raleigh there.
Cool. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up a few things. I'm going to have the both of you stick around. So let me just go over some of the things before we call it a night here. Just want to remind you, if you've got any scanner questions or you weren't able to ask them this evening, you can ask them a couple of different ways. You can email the Scanner Master through support@scannermaster.com. You give us a call at 1-800-722-6637. We are open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and shop us 24/7 online at scannermaster.com. Also, next broadcast is Wednesday, September the 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And as always, as you can see there, we're brought to you by Scanner Master. And our stupid scanner tricks and shack photos. We want to see those. So email them over to thescannerguys@gmail.com. Make sure you email those over to thescannerguys@gmail.com. If you're a rail fan, make sure you check out the Train Aficionado blog. Follow their social media on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Train Aficionado there. And don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to Scanner Master on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And don't forget the Scanner Guys are on social media as well on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. So make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. We thank you so much each and every week joining us right here on the show. And
trying to point towards y'all's names right up there. There we go.
So I guess we'll wrap this up this evening.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
Yes.
Wherever it is.
Wherever it is. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you here, Marshall. And we will talk to you again soon. So have a good night.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
All right, Marshall, just stick around in the broadcast. Have a good night, everybody. I forgot to say that when I was live. We're still here.